The sun began to rise slowly, spreading its weak light across the valley. The mist clung to the ground, cold and heavy, making the air damp and difficult to breathe. Inside a shallow cave, a small group of early humans stirred awake. They were wrapped in rough animal hides, their bodies thin from hunger. The youngest whined softly, their stomachs empty, while the elders sat quietly, watching the world outside with wary eyes. This was no gentle morning. The rumble of the earth carried the sound of mammoths moving in the distance, their massive feet pounding the ground like thunder. Somewhere far away, a deep roar echoed, the unmistakable call of a saber-toothed cat. Even the birds overhead were no ordinary birds. Their wingspans stretched wider than two men, their sharp beaks ready to tear into flesh. Every sound from the wilderness was a reminder of danger, and yet, danger was the same force that pushed them forward to live another day. The men of the group gripped their sharpened sticks and stone tools, crude weapons that barely seemed enough against the giants of this land. Still, they had no choice but to rely on them. They needed food, and without food, the fire in their bodies would die out. Before the sun reached the highest point in the sky, the women gathered what little dried roots and berries they had collected the day before, sharing small pieces among the children to quiet their hunger. But these scraps could not last. The tribe had to move. The leader, a broad-shouldered man with scars across his arms, stood at the cave's mouth. His eyes scanned the valley below, the winding river glimmering faintly in the light, the swaying tall grass, and the shadows lurking where predators might hide. He raised his hand, signaling to the others. It was time. The group prepared to leave the safety of the cave, though safety was never truly certain in this world. Stepping outside, their bare feet pressed into the cold soil. The air smelled of wet grass, mud, and the faint musk of nearby animals. For a brief moment, the valley looked beautiful, endless, and alive. But beauty meant nothing here. Survival was all that mattered. The people moved together in silence, every step careful, every ear tuned to the sounds of the wild. Somewhere ahead lay food. Somewhere ahead also lay death. Which they would find first was a gamble they had to take every single day. The group moved slowly through the tall grass, every rustle beneath their feet making their hearts race. The morning mist had lifted, but the air was still heavy with tension. Hunger was driving them forward, yet danger pressed in from all sides. Their eyes darted constantly, watching for prey, but also for predators. A wrong step could mean a sudden end. At the front, two men crouched low, their eyes fixed on the plain ahead. Through the swaying stalks, they spotted movement, a herd of small, wild horses grazing near the riverbank. Their coats gleamed in the weak sunlight, and their heads rose and lowered with a calm rhythm. For the tribe, this was hope, this was life. Meat for the hungry, hide for clothing, bone for tools. The men glanced at each other, their silent nods the only signal. The hunt had begun. The tribe spread out, moving like shadows across the grass. Women and older children took their places at the sides, their task to drive the herd toward the waiting trap. The trap itself was simple yet deadly, a shallow pit dug days earlier, lined with sharpened wooden stakes, then covered lightly with branches and earth. If they could guide even one animal into it, the hunt would be a success. The leader picked up a round stone, its surface chipped sharp. With a strong throw, he sent it flying into the middle of the herd. The stone struck with a loud crack, startling the animals. Neighs and panic cries erupted as the horses bolted in every direction. Shouts from the hunters followed, fierce and wild, their voices carrying through the valley. Spears cut through the air, some missing, some grazing flesh. One horse stumbled, limping, fear in its eyes. The hunters closed in. The weak horse, confused and injured, ran straight toward the hidden pit. Its hooves thundered against the earth, its breath harsh, until suddenly the ground gave way beneath it. A scream tore from the animal's throat as it crashed into the trap, the sharpened stakes piercing its body. The struggle was short but violent. Dust rose in clouds, mixing with the scent of fresh blood. The tribe gathered quickly, their cries of victory echoing through the valley. Children clapped their hands, while the women rushed forward to begin cutting the animal's hide and gathering the precious meat. Yet even as joy filled their eyes, an unspoken fear lingered. Blood meant life for them, but it also meant death could come swiftly. Every predator within miles would catch the scent, and it would not be long before the shadows of saber-toothed cats or packs of giant wolves came sniffing. The leader raised his hand again, signaling urgency. The tribe worked with frantic energy, cutting, tearing, and carrying what they could. The feast would give them strength, but time was short. Survival never gave them the gift of rest. It only offered the briefest victories before the next battle began. The night fell heavy and cold, wrapping the valley in silence broken only by the crackle of fire. Inside a ring of stones, flames danced, sending sparks into the darkness. Around it sat the tribe, huddled close, their faces glowing in shades of orange and red. The smell of roasted meat filled the air, a rare luxury that made even the youngest children sit wide-eyed and waiting. For a brief moment, hunger was quieted, and the fire gave them something no cave or weapon could, the feeling of safety. Mothers tore pieces of meat and passed them to their children, who gnawed with eager teeth. The older ones sat silently, their eyes fixed on the fire as though it held answers to mysteries they could not name. The elders, scarred and weary, muttered guttural words, telling stories, not of heroes, but of warnings. Stories of the river that swallowed men whole, of the beasts with eyes that glowed like fire, of storms that ripped trees from the earth. Their voices rose and fell like chants, part memory, part lesson. The children listened, wide-eyed, knowing that these stories could mean the difference between life and death tomorrow. But in this world, safety was always an illusion. From beyond the fire's glow, a sound broke the night, a sharp crack, the snapping of a branch. The tribe froze. Silence stretched, broken only by the hiss of burning wood. Then came another sound, low and deep, like a growl carried on the wind. Eyes shifted toward the darkness at the tree line. There, faint and gleaming, pairs of eyes reflected the firelight, yellow, unblinking, watching. Saber-toothed cats. The men leapt to their feet, gripping spears and stone axes, their bodies tense, their shadows huge and jagged in the firelight. The women pulled the children close, pressing them into the earth, whispering for silence. The cats moved slowly, their massive shoulders rippling, fangs gleaming as they crept closer. The smell of roasted meat had drawn them, and they were hungry. The leader stepped forward, his voice a harsh shout, echoed by the other men. They raised their weapons high, striking them against the ground, their cries fierce and desperate. The fire was stoked higher, dry wood thrown into the flames until they roared and spat. Sparks flew upward like stars. The predators paused, their glowing eyes narrowing, their bodies crouching low. For a moment, the world seemed to stop. Then, with a deep growl, one of the cats advanced, its steps slow but certain. Spears flew, missing in the dark, clattering against stones. Shouts grew louder, the men circling the fire, their voices uniting in a wall of sound. The cat stopped, its ears twitching, uncertain. Behind it, others shifted uneasily. Fire was strange to them, dangerous, unnatural. After long breaths of tension, the glowing eyes retreated, fading back into the night. The silence returned, broken only by the tribe's ragged breathing. The fire had saved them, as it always did. But everyone knew the truth. The predators would return. Maybe tomorrow, maybe the night after. The wilderness never forgave the weak. The tribe ate the rest of their meal in silence, their joy stolen, their eyes constantly scanning the shadows. In the heart of the night, the fire burned bright, a fragile shield against a world that never slept. The first light of dawn crept over the horizon, painting the valley in pale gold. The fire had burned low through the night, leaving behind only smoldering embers and the smell of smoke. The tribe sat in silence, their faces hollow with exhaustion. Not everyone had survived the night. A young hunter lay still near the cave's entrance, his body torn and lifeless from the saber-toothed attack that had come when the fire waned. His mother wept quietly, her sobs muffled into her hands. Death was no stranger to them, but each loss was a wound that never healed. The elders gathered, their eyes heavy, and dug into the earth with flat stones, carving out a shallow grave. The tribe moved together, lifting the body with care, placing it into the ground. They covered him with earth and stone, not out of ritual, but out of necessity, to protect him from scavengers. The children stood watching, their faces blank, already learning that in this world, grief could not last long. Survival left no room for it. After the burial, life had to continue. The women spread out near the river, searching for berries, roots, and edible plants. Some carried sharpened shells tied to sticks, using them to cut reeds and gather tubers hidden beneath the mud. Every step was careful, every hand cautious, for they knew poisonous plants could kill just as surely as a predator's claw. The children followed, learning which berries to pick, which leaves to avoid, their small hands mimicking the movements of their mothers. Meanwhile, the men worked to sharpen new spears. They struck one stone against another, chipping edges until blades formed sharp and jagged. Others stripped branches of bark, straightening them over small flames, hardening the wood. The young hunters practiced throwing spears at tree trunks, their voices raised in determination, as they tried to match the strength of the older men. Each failure was corrected by harsh gestures and guttural instructions. This was how survival was taught, not through words of comfort, but through endless repetition and discipline. As the day stretched on, the tribe prepared to move. They never stayed in one place for long. Predators learned too quickly, and resources vanished fast. With bundles of meat, hides, and tools tied together, they stepped into the valley once again. The sun was bright now, warming their skin, but no one felt safe. The wilderness was alive with threats. Mammoths that could trample them with a single step. Giant wolves that hunted in packs. Birds with talons sharp enough to pierce bone. Every direction promised both opportunity and death. Yet even in the midst of fear, the people endured. The children laughed briefly as they splashed in the river, their joy innocent, fleeting, yet vital. The elders watched with tired pride, knowing that these young ones carried the fragile thread of their future. Every sunrise was a challenge, every sunset a victory, however small. The world was not built for them, it was built to test them. And still, through hunger, loss, and endless danger, they pressed forward. Their courage was quiet, their victories fragile, but it was enough. In their struggle lay the first steps of humanity, and in their survival was the promise of everything that would one day come.